Good morning. Today I am excited to be making a video about my 1995 Toyota Camry LE for you guys. Today I'm going to be fixing a common issue on these cars, and there's not a whole lot of content out there on this particular repair, and that's because it is a bigger one. It's one that I'm a little bit nervous to be doing today, one that I hope we can get done fairly quickly, and that is replacing all of the motor mounts and the transmission mount on this car. Now, these inline 4-cylinder 2.2 liter engines are really small, they're easy to take out, they're easy to work on, and hopefully the motor mounts will go pretty quickly for us today. But of course, being over 30 years old, we may run into some complications. But I'm going to walk you through this repair step by step. Today's video might be a little different style than most of my other videos, but I do hope this ends up being a really good repair video, one that can help you easily do this repair without a ton of research like I've had to do. With all that said, if you like this type of content, if you love these cars, if you love cars in general, go ahead and hit the big red button below so that you're tuned in to everything that I have going on here on the channel. Also follow me on the Insta link in the description, and give this video a big thumbs up. Step number one, get your Toyota Camry up on jack stands, at least on the upper portion. Make sure you block the back tires and set the parking brake so that you can do this safely. We're now going to start this repair by moving the upper torque strut mount. This is done with a 14mm socket. Once you get the old mount out, go ahead and set it aside. We're not going to put the new mount back in for now. Next, we're going to start with the front motor mount that is located just down below here. This motor mount has 3 bolts on the bottom of it and 1 bolt on top. To do this, we're going to place a piece of wood underneath the oil pan and lightly jack up on the motor with our floor jack so that it will relieve pressure from the motor mount. You'll then have to remove the bottom cover plate below the engine with a 10mm socket. Once that is done, using a trusty impact wrench, remove the bolts from the bottom of the motor mount. Then I come back up top, and still using an impact wrench, I remove the 2 side 14mm bolts. I then decided to conquer the 17mm bolt on the top of the motor mount, but something you may want to do first is place a jack with some blocks of wood underneath your oil pan and lift the motor up slightly to remove pressure from this bolt, which is something you're going to have to do to get the motor mount out of the car. I then kind of wiggled it and snaked my way up out of the car. I then put the new motor mount back in the same way, and I tightened the 3 bottom bolts, or I tightened the 2 bolts on the side and the 1 14mm bolt underneath. I then loosely put in place the 17mm top bolt and let the engine down off of the jack. I'm not going to tighten this bolt yet. That way the engine has some play in it for when we remove the rear motor mount and get it replaced. To get that 17mm bolt lined up at the top of the motor mount, you may have to use a pry bar to kind of hold that mounting spot in place as you let the jack down. Do not grab it with your fingers or your hand, because although this is a small motor, it is still very heavy, and that's a good way to lose a finger. So get the pry bar out, line that up, put that bolt in loosely. Also, once you're done with that, you may want to put back on the bottom cover with the 10mm bolts, since we don't have to access anything under there again. Now we're going to move on to the more difficult motor mount, the one in the rear. This one is really hard to access and to get to, but we're going to start by taking off the passenger side tire. Then once underneath the car, we will remove the 2 bolt hole covers so that we can access the bolts on the bottom of this motor mount. We're going to remove the motor mount bolt starting with the top one. This is a 17mm bolt, and this one is going to be very difficult to remove. Use a 14mm socket and a 3-inch extension to remove the 2 bottom bolts. Then we will lift the rear of the motor with a jack and blocks of woods to remove the rear motor mount. Alright guys, so I just got the rear motor mount out of the car, and I want to show you guys why the old one is different from the new one, or why the new one's different from the old one. The old one has a stud on it, the new one does not. So you're going to have to get a bolt, and that'll just go through the mount into here. And there's not a lot of room back there to work with, but this is so much easier to deal with than this. To reinstall this, we'll put this up in there, put the bolt through, and we'll then slowly lower it down into the mounts on the bottom. Once they're on the bottom, we'll tighten all this up. We'll come back in front. Don't forget to do this. Tighten that 17mm on the top of the front engine mount. Well, it's really hard to see in here. There's the new shock, so I snaked it in through here when I had wood blocks underneath the oil pan here, and I picked up the motor as far as that jack could go up. I wiggled the top in, I got the bolt set in and tight, and now I'm just got to torque the bottom ones in. But that's what you do, is you just got to wiggle everything in right through here, get it lined up there on the top part of the mount, put the new bolt through. The old one had a stud. This is a lot easier. Put the bolt through and then just set the jack down slowly, make sure those holes hit, everything's lined up. And I'm going to go ahead and go back underneath here and tighten everything up. And now we'll move on to the transmission. This should be the easiest mount of the 3 to do, or I guess the 4 technically. First, we need to remove the driver's side wheel and the wheel cover to access this mount. Then underneath the subframe, there are 2 bolt hole covers that we will also need to remove. Be careful so that you don't push them up inside of the subframe like I did on the last mount. We will remove both the lower bolts of the transmission mount. We will then lift the transmission and remove the upper bolts. Alright, so here is the old transmission mount. Here is the new transmission mount that sits in the transmission like this as well. And this one has very, very little play whatsoever because it is brand new and tight and in very good condition. Now, what you want to do with these mounts is compare them really quickly. Make sure that all the holes look like they're going to line up. And sometimes on these you have to adjust the tension and whatnot just a little bit. The only thing that I'm going to do is take this bolt and put it into here, tighten this mount up just a little bit, and we'll put her back on the car. Hopefully I didn't skip any steps here in the repair. In the description are the instructions to how to replace all of these motor mounts. Go ahead and copy them, print them out, and use them. They are super, super helpful. I made these instructions from a conglomerate of a bunch of different videos that I found and forums online, and from doing it here in my own experience. So hopefully they're somewhat accurate and work for your car. This should be for, I think, 90, 92 to like 97. So if the motor mounts are bad on your Camry, which they probably are or are going to be just because of the nature of materials that they used in these, then go ahead and use those instructions, get them replaced. It's super easy to do. This video made it seem really quick and fast, but if you've never done this kind of stuff before, or even if you're a seasoned mechanic, you know, I'd budget like an hour to an hour and a half, 2 hours, just in case you have some stuck bolts or can't find a bolt or something like that. If you're not a seasoned mechanic, I'd budget like 3 hours to do this job. It seems really easy in the video. Everything went super smoothly on my car, so you know, it just depends. I'd plan on taking about 3 hours before you start doing it, because until you get them all replaced, you can't drive your car. Also, I would highly recommend that you replace all of the motor mounts on this car at the same time. That's typically a standard practice. I think the whole kit to do this was like 40 bucks. It's really not that expensive of a job. These cars are super easy and cheap to work on, so I wouldn't be worried about doing it yourself as long as you have kind of a complete toolkit. And finally, my 95 Camry feels brand new once again with the new motor mounts and the new shocks. This car is gonna ride and drive amazing. Now I just have to get my AC working, and then this car is completely sorted, and I may take it to the body shop to get the side completely straightened out. With only 118,000 miles, this car is definitely worth saving. And yes, these cars are very good to drive around even in 2021. Hopefully this video helped you out. If it did, go ahead and smash that thumbs up button. If you have any questions, comments, something that made it easier for you, go ahead and drop them in the comment section below. I try to respond to all of the comments, so I'll see it there and I'll get to it as soon as I possibly can. And if you like this style of content, subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss out on any future uploads. With all that said, I hope you guys are doing great. Get out, enjoy your automotive ownership, and I'll catch you in the next video.